Hey, I'm Dr. Andrew Smith, clinical psychologist, professor, researcher, Pat Tillman military scholar. I've spent my career understanding how relationships work, how they sit at the core of our resilience and our ability to live meaningful, thriving lives. I've used that understanding to develop and refine an intervention called Rewire. Find out more by going to rewirewellness.co, link in the description. Today's video is focused on how values sit at the core of healthy relationships. Ever feel like life's pulling you in all directions? One moment you're calm, the next you're caught in a whirlwind of emotion. Relationships are so often the thing that bring this out. I've been there, and today I want to share with you how I've developed an approach to get back on track by using values as a compass. So let's dive in. In today's world, we often hear companies talk about values in their mission statements, they post them on their walls. Here's the thing, values aren't just for businesses and organizations. They're actually essential in our personal lives too. Values like honesty, authenticity, gentleness, wisdom, persistence. These can be like a compass that guide us through tough situations. They help us build stronger, more meaningful relationships. That's what I love about Rewire. It's an approach that focuses on helping us realign with our values, even when our emotions and thoughts try to steer us off course. Rewire gives us the tools to get back on track when we lose our way. So, before we get started, I'd love to know, what are some of the core values you live by? Drop them in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. So, I'll just start with an anecdote. Last week, my wife and I, frankly, we got into an argument. It started small, like they always do, and it was about not much of anything. But as the conversation went on, I felt myself getting more frustrated. Frustration, anger started to boil inside me, percolate inside me. The discussion was about a decision we had to make, and I started to feel like my opinions weren't being heard. Ever been there? So my emotions escalated. Before I knew it, I raised my voice. The way I reacted, it didn't align with the way that I feel about my wife. It didn't align with my core values of gentleness and honesty. Gentleness and honesty. Have you ever been in a situation where your emotions took over, where you acted in a way that didn't align with your values? That's something Rewire really helps with. In recognizing those moments where emotions can pull us away from who we want to be and giving us the tool set to shift back towards values led actions so that our actions align with the direction in our lives that we want to go for ourselves and for our relationships. If you've ever been in a situation where your emotions ran hot, and took you away from who you wanted to be in that moment, away from your values, comment below. I'm being vulnerable here, inviting you to do the same. So, continuing this story. So, I was at a choice point. I could continue down the path of frustration, doubling down on the justice or the rights by which I was frustrated, raising my voice, or I could stop, take a breath, let my values guide me. That frustration, it's actually blocking me from being honest and gentle with my wife and being aligned with myself. So here's where values become critical. Let's just use these two as an example, gentleness and honesty. They remind me of the kind of person I want to be in the moment. If I can slow down enough to be mindful that my emotions are running away with the conversation and find a way with one simple action to realign with one of these: gentleness, honesty, compassion. Even though I'd already let my frustration show, I still have some choice points. We can still look into the opportunity to step in, take responsibility for where I've not lived up to my values, and steer the conversation back on course by realigning with my values. So, choice point one. Let's draw this out. So, choice point one. Let's draw this out. Actually, let's do it like this. We've got two roads. Choice one, I've made a mistake in this conversation. Even if my frustration is valid, and it is, emotion is a valid experience because it is. Um, do I want to continue to work to justify why I'm frustrated? I could continue arguing and letting my emotions take control. That's choice one. Or I could step back and approach the conversation using my values to guide. I might not be able to stop myself from being frustrated, but I'm able to take ownership of that, take responsibility for my frustration, and shift towards, nonetheless, let me align my words and my actions right now as much as possible, with honesty, with gentleness at the same time. This is what Rewire emphasizes, helping us notice these choice points, become mindful of them, and opt for values driven actions so that we're more aligned with who we want to be and where we want to go. So, one way of doing this is to sort of retroactively catch myself. I'm sorry I raised my voice. That's not how I want to communicate with you. Let's try to find a solution together. That might be a way that I approach it. That can be how we realign ourselves. Imperfectly, we can't be after perfection or non friction. We call that a dead man's goal, a goal for somebody who's not living in real relationships. We can't align with perfection, but we can notice where we're not lining up with our values and imperfectly but sincerely take responsibility for that and move in the direction of realignment. I'm not necessarily just doing this for the sake of my relationship. I'm doing it to align inside, internally with myself. So, in relationships, I used the compass a little bit earlier. In relationships, values give you a true north. So, in relationships, values are like a trustworthy compass. They help us stay on course or refine our course more likely, especially in the relationships that matter most to us, whether that's with a spouse, a significant other, our children, close friends, even colleagues. When emotions run high, values provide a reliable guide to navigate through those situations rather than being swept away in the moment. This is central to Rewire, using values as the foundation, noticing when emotions are getting the best of us and thoughts are controlling our actions and sort of ruling us, and stepping back and saying, if I could align with one of my core values, how could I move this forward? So let's visualize this a little bit, just a little bit more. So life has a lot of ups and downs, at least mine has. I couldn't have predicted that I'd be where I am today, even living in the place that I am today or working in the ways that I do. Um, as a 22-year-old, you'd never have guessed it. So life has a way of being unpredictable. If you're somebody who's had a long and winding road, comment in the chat. You're not alone. So when emotions and thoughts guide and drive us, I often say to folks in my clinic, how many thoughts do you have in a day? Answer, many, many thoughts. How many emotions do you have in a day? Answer, fewer, but quite a few, maybe 10 in a day, back and forth, ebbing and flowing. So if we let thoughts and emotions that occur at that high frequency guide us and drive us, we end up in repetitive patterns that keep us stuck and unable to change, that are really driven by emotion. So values come in. Values come in and they say, if I don't want to stay stuck like this, how could I make one choice out of my emotion in some kind of trajectory forward that is stable and consistent and moving in the direction of who I aspire to be and where I aspire to go, instead of repetitively staying stuck in this um, emotional soup, uh, thought soup, rumination. Um, Values can serve as a compass that drive us on more linear trajectories, even in the storm that life can bring sometimes. That's why values matter so much in relationships. They guide us through difficult moments. They help us stay on the path towards meaningful, fulfilling connections. They help us, instead of continuing down the justification of the pain that we bring into our relationships, they really help us find a way to take responsibility for the ways that we're causing distress in our relationships, and to mount responses that start to take us out of the pain that we're bringing and start to be healers in those relationships. So let's look quickly at a common pattern. Imagine you've had a tough day. We're going to be talking about the role of emotions a bit more here. So imagine you've had a tough day. Something happens at home or work and it triggers an emotional reaction, maybe like the argument with my wife. So we've got a tough day. That's a rain cloud. My drawing is not the best. So your immediate emotional responses might pull you away from your values. Maybe you snap at someone or withdraw into silence. Now, do you double down on that emotion, or do you recognize the choice point that's in front of you to realign with your values? Again, this is where Rewire comes in. It teaches us to pause in moments like these to choose values instead of letting emotions take control. Or it allows us a language for beginning to notice. So often it's after the fact that I've noticed my emotions when I'm not, when I'm having a day like this. It's after the fact that I'm able to come back and say, hey, I think I let my emotions get away from me. Here's how I want to take responsibility and realign. So next time you find yourself in a similar choice point, try slowing down. Try asking yourself in a mindful way, what values are at play here? Where is the incongruence between how I'm acting and feeling? Where is the incongruence between how I my values would lead me to act and how I'm actually acting? It's the difference between ideal and actual self. So if you've ever successfully used values to guide you through an emotional moment, drop a quick yes in the comments below. Um, it feels like a real win to start getting some of these under our belts, to not let emotion be in the driver's seat, but to let values guide responses. So this approach of aligning with values, it doesn't just prevent painful mistakes, eventually, once it's been learned, but it actually creates opportunities for deeper connection through these imperfections that we all have. In that moment with my wife, I had the choice to communicate more openly and work through the issues in a way that strengthened our relationship. And my frustration, it didn't come from nowhere. By me being able to get around it and take responsibility for it, we were actually able to talk about the source and the core of that frustration better. By choosing values, we turn potentially hurtful moments into meaningful ones. That's the big takeaway. When we live by our values, or we at least attempt to imperfectly, we don't just develop the skills for avoiding conflict eventually, but we build stronger, more resilient relationships. That's the goal of Rewire. It's not just about individual growth, but improving relationships by living out our values, by being able to be more communicative and honest in our relationships. So here's the challenge for you. Think about your values. Start building the skill to notice when actions don't quite align with those values, and use this mindfulness of that or knowledge of that as an opportunity to realign. You'll feel more peace internally. It's not about perfection, it's about realignment, recalibration, again and again in this journey towards becoming the versions of ourselves that we're hoping to be. So if this video got you thinking about your own values, comment below, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. We're building this community and we're excited to do it. There's a lot more coming on how values shape our lives and relationships. Thanks for watching this. Hey, y'all. If you got something out of that video, if you found it helpful, there's plenty more. Check out the other videos on this channel. And over the coming months, trust me, there's going to be a lot more. So stay tuned. We're also really excited about building this community. So you can be a part of that. Subscribe, comment below, let us know what resonated with you, and also visit our website, rewirewellness.co. Let's build this community together.